Cort Wrotnowski, publisher of Yankee News, coming to you from the world-famous Parkway Diner in Stamford, Connecticut on this Monday, January 23rd, the year of our Lord, 2025. So, to use a phrase that Jesse Kelly likes to use, let's have some fun tonight. Yay! I guess. And I guess I should use a phrase like that because every time I write something down, it becomes obsolete. That's how fast the news is moving. So what do we got? Oh my goodness. So one of the things I had here, a whole bunch of links. And I asked the question, will Iran counterattack? Well, we got as far as a missile they shot at the airfield base in Qatar, I think, Al-Ahaid or something. Meantime, just coming across the wire, how many minutes ago, Eric? The ceasefire.
Probably in the last half hour,
yes.
Or 45 minutes.
Okay, so let's just say in the last hour, Iran has signaled its willingness to engage in a ceasefire with Israel. All right. So they say they're going to stop firing missiles and sending drones, and they expect Israel to do the same. But what about all the action the IDF is engaging in on the ground in Iran, especially in Tehran? We don't know. But all we know is up until the moment of this announcement for the ceasefire, a lot of people were being eliminated in Iran. There was a report of 1,000 IGRC people having been killed by the Israelis just in the last day. So in other words, they had identified these creeps and, quote, dispatched them quite quickly. All right, so is Israel going to stop doing that? Hard to say. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say, Eric was showing me this interview with Victor Davis Hanson, and you can always count on him for a good comprehensive view of the events. On this case, I wish to offer that there was one part I wish he had talked about more, and that's the fact that Israel has been planning on this for a very long time, very long, okay? And the fact that they were able to push back Hamas, shut down Hezbollah for the most part, were critical steps in doing this. Syria being taken over also figures prominently in this thinking, even though Israel's not a part of it. So you have that weakening Iran. Now they are in a position to concentrate more resources on Iran, and we see the results, okay? Victor Davis Hanson did not dwell on that so much. And the other part he didn't dwell on is the fact that Israel and America has been very carefully working out what we'll call the Mutt and Jeff routine. So Jeff would be America, Donald Trump, and Mutt would be Israel. Jeff is trying to be nice, Mutt's being rough. And you would hope that somewhere in this mix, the Iranian government would say, we should really go with Jeff's proposals. Well, they didn't. They ended up having to get roughed up a little bit until they finally figured it out. Okay, so I did come up with this piece. Actually, before I get into that, I want to mention to my friends in Connecticut a big deal, all right? And I think you will have posted this, hopefully, Eric, the stuff that I would have sent about the Connecticut GOP chair election tomorrow. No, well, you'll have it up.
I got it in a letter. But,
okay, so it needs to be, all right, yeah, well, it needs to be posted. And so for anybody who's listening, tomorrow night, to be at the Casa Mia at the Hawthorne at 2421 Berlin Turnpike in Berlin, Connecticut. And by the way, if you want to give them a call, their number is 860-357-2061. That's 860-357-2061. So the State Central Committee delegates will be voting for the new chair. We'll be meeting there 7 o'clock. We are asking people to show up at 6 o'clock to give support to the person who is challenging the incumbent. That would be Ben Proto. His name is Jason Douglas. And as we speak right now, Jason Douglas is on the phone calling up as many of the delegates as he can. And he will tell you, based upon his experience so far, there is a sense, just a sense, that he's getting traction. A lot of people are looking at Ben Proto and they're just sick of him, just sick of him. And that's because he has not served the Republican Party well. I'll make the argument he's done more for the Democrat Party than he's done for the Republican Party. So there. And we recognize, many of us recognize it, many of the state central members recognize it. So up until Jason showed up, was just a few days ago, there was no alternative to Ben Proto. So he's moving as fast as he can. And I'll just mention, no name mentioned, that a prominent long-term member of State Central is definitely now in his corner. So if that individual starts to reach out to others and exerts that influence, this is going to get interesting. But there'll be more on this, so don't worry. So again, tomorrow, Tuesday, June 24th, Casa Mia at the Hawthorne, 2421 Berlin Turnpike, Berlin, Connecticut. It's going to be big, and we'll be there too, broadcasting it. So you got to check it out. All right. The other big item, as far as Connecticut is concerned, after all the drama, all the wondering, and all the emails and letters that were written, Governor Lamont finally vetoed Bill 5002. That's right, concerning their so-called housing bill. Now, we have time now to help straighten out some of the BS that Democrats have been larding on us. And the first is that there's a housing crisis in Connecticut. Newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, there is no housing crisis, okay? That's okay. So you got anything else beside your thumbs to use?
Oh, no,
So-
we won't use those.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just start. All right, so then statement, you have the two groups competing with each other. So on the pro-local control side, you have CT 169 Strong. On the pro-tyranny and centralized government side, you have Desegregate Connecticut. So they made the point that this bill would attempt to usurp local control on zoning matters, stifle public input, and to instill unworkable provisions which would have eliminated parking requirements for certain developments. Anyway, that's just for openers. It goes on from there. All right, so good intentions, bad methods, I would say, is the best that can be said about this. So meantime, over in the desegregate corner, they're complaining about the 30% of homeowners and 50% of home renters who are cost burdened in Connecticut. Now, what could you possibly mean by cost burden? I submit that might be the word overtaxed. Or you make life in Connecticut so expensive, it's hard for these people to keep their homes and stay here rented. Homelessness in Connecticut, they say, has risen 13% year over year. You know, it's like, this is the fundamental problem that the Democrats have, ladies and gentlemen. They can complain, but they can never take responsibility. We're living in a state that's been controlled by the Democrats for over 40 years. And somehow they're blameless throughout this whole time, as far as problems like these are concerned. Forget it. Oh, Connecticut is 49th in the country on housing production. Oh yeah? And whose fault is that? All right? You just, wow. Anyway, I hope to have the opportunity to be able to step back and let's take a good, close look at the foundation for these arguments that they're making, because quite simply, in my opinion, Desegregate Connecticut is being specious, and that's putting it nicely. All right, we've got that behind us. Now let's move on to the groovy stuff. Okay, the theme for this week is bunker politics for Ayatollah Khamenei. Bunker politics. Let me just read the first paragraph, it's short. Poor bastard. How would you like to be holed up in a bunker with your family? Imagine those family politics at close range. Add to that the national politics of crazed, bloodthirsty Islamic mullahs. Now that is a toxic brew. Now it's just got even worse because I just want to remind you, if you didn't hear it in the news, but I think you did, Saturday a little something happened when certain B-2 bombers dropped certain bunker buster bombers on those facilities in Iran. There is no party.
30,000-pound bomb.
Yeah, there's no party in that bunker tonight, all right, or any time. And I mean, I can make, so in this piece I make these jokes. Let me just go through these things here. So there was the strike, that was done. International reactions, China, Russia, Pakistan. Okay, China, as we know, had sent some airplanes last week sometime, and it was not clear exactly what they're doing, but it was a classic case of being secretive because they took a very odd route, and once they reached a certain point of getting into Iran, they turned their beacons off. Okay, meantime, the satellites are following all this. So guys, I don't know what you're thinking. All right, so they took whatever they needed to take, and that part was done. Meantime, you had the trucks that were purportedly taking what fissile material there was at the facilities, two places we still do not know, and Russia. What am I going to say about Russia? It's still a bit of a mystery, if we're being honest. I'm going to get into Russia a little bit more. I'm just going to say that there's clearly a serious problem for Russia with respect to the trends right now in Iran. What that's going to look like a year from now, well, we'll get into it. Pakistan, this is my favorite story. I don't know if I mentioned this last week. You had the Iranian parliament chanting at some point, Pakistan, Pakistan, Pakistan. So they were so thrilled. I don't know why they like Pakistan suddenly so much. Meantime, Pakistan had sealed the border with Iran. So what do you think? Maybe they were trying to keep those trucks with the fissile material coming into Pakistan? That's a conjecture to consider. And so, all right, I'll get to Russia. It's bugging me. All right, now, let's talk about the threats now are history, I'll have to say. So there was an attack, what, a day or two ago? No, it was less than a day. 40 missiles sent by Iran attacking Israel. I think 23 people injured, nobody was killed, did minimal damage, and so that's pretty bad. Then, earlier today, you had a missile attack on the American airfield in Qatar, I believe, if I've got the information correct. And then shortly after that, Iran announces that they're going to have a ceasefire with Israel. It's a strange pattern of events. And so this is layered over with the other one, and the one that we really need to talk about. That's right. A lot has been said about this over the last few days. It's called regime change. Charlie Kirk, good for him, was very quick to point out that when, especially in Iran's case, America's history of regime change is pretty bad, pretty bad. So why should we think that anything better is going to happen in the future if we haven't changed our ways? And guess what? We have not. We have not. So we're left with what's going to be done. Now I need to go back to Israel again, because the way Israel has approached this is so different, and I'm going to say it, so much smarter than anybody else has done with respect to dealing with an adversary like Iran, okay? If anything, I will offer as another theory of mine that there's a little military strategist, you might have heard of him, von Clausewitz. He makes the point that if you have a multiplicity of opponents, you take the weakest one first, and then the next one and the next one until at last you can concentrate your resources on the worst offender. Well, it's taken a long time, but that's where we are right now. Hamas was the weakest, then Hezbollah. Now you're left with Iran. And they had, that's right, a plan for Iran. And it looks like it's working out pretty well. So if you had, Eric, did you know about the prison explosion?
No.
Oh, okay. So I think it was today. There is a prison in Iran, which is where they house a lot of their political prisoners. The video shows the door in that prison being blown wide open. All right, so now those people are, quote, technically free, but there's still a period of confusion and trying to get this sorted out as they figure out what they're going to do next. Okay, so as far as I can tell, if you're able to release the political prisoners in Iran, and you have Reza Pahlavi announcing the formation of a transitional government, you're in a position now to actually start the kind of popular uprising that you're going to be needing to bring about true regime change. So I think that's what we're looking at over the next couple of weeks. The fighting is over, and the regime is on the way out the door. That may be the summary, okay? Now let me just spend a minute here because I have a bug up my rear about this, I have to admit. Sipping tea in Moscow. That's right. We had that little trip. Some of them their Iranian officials decided to go visit Putin and have some tea there in Moscow. And I just have to ask a few serious questions. What in God's name do you expect to accomplish? Let me just make the point. In all the different treaties that Russia and Iran have signed over the years, guess what clause they have both assiduously avoided? Mutual assistance. Military mutual assistance. Looking at each other and saying, if you get into trouble, you're on your own. Now, of course, that hasn't prevented Iran from providing Russia with the, what they call the Shahed drones. Russia gets the Shahed drones and then they upgrade them for their use in Ukraine. Okay, but in the meantime, where do we want to go with this? You have the conversation, you go home, you haven't accomplished anything. But this is what you want to think about. Russia has to consider the fact that if they lose Iran, they're going to lose a lot. And one of the thoughts that occurred to me is that I don't think Russia has access to any Iranian ports now, but they're there and they could have used them. If you have a pro-Western regime, they're gone. So you take what's happened in Syria, the Tartus port, at some point, it'll be gone. So they've had to move to what? Some port in Libya or something for the Mediterranean, but their options are very limited in terms of their navy as a result. And then what type of trade are they going to have? I mean, a pro-Western regime is probably going to stop sending them those drones. But I have to think that there are other elements here that have not become clear. And I think the one that we need to dwell on the most is what is going to happen when Iran becomes pro-Western, all right? That is going to take a chunk out of Russia's geopolitical strategy, all right? They're not going to have much wiggle room in the Mideast. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? I think the best they could hope to do is cozy up a little bit more with India because the oil deal they have, yes.
And please opine.
Yes.
As you did before about the Straits of Hormuz and the China.
Oh, that part.
Correlation.
Okay.
For the viewing audience.
Yes, well, dear viewing audience, oh my God. All right. There is in the news the announcement the Iranian parliament said, yeah, we want to block the Straits of Hormuz. Yeah, we're down with that. So they passed legislation such as it is. I don't know how they're going to get it to the bunker because no one's been able to contact the Ayatollah in the bunker. Supposedly hasn't been getting any food or his medicine. So how are you going to get him to sign some legislation? Okay. So they want to block the Straits of Hormuz. There's just one little problem. Ladies and gentlemen, rather than play a guessing game, I'll just lay it out. 95%, all right, Iran produces 2.8 to 3.2 million barrels of oil a day. 95% of that oil they produce goes to China. That's a lot. I mean, depending on one customer, that's dangerous, but that's what they do. Now, if these Weisenheimers and the Iranian legislature want to block the Straits of Hormuz, How are they going to get the oil to China? Anybody got any suggestions? They don't have any pipelines, and they got to go through a place like India that may not be that friendly to China. No, no, or Pakistan. No, no. I think that this would be a serious issue for China because they would lose 15% of their oil imports, and Iran would lose about $100 to $200 million a day in oil revenue. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, the Iranian parliament is cutting its own throat if they want to mine the Straits of Hormuz or do anything else to block the traffic. Okay, so maybe it's another proud, boastful gesture, but in practical terms, not a good idea. Not a good idea. Okay, so just to, meantime, I have to throw in this other thing. Okay, you know, it's just amazing. So even this now is becoming dated information. Let's put it this way. This morning, you and I would have had a discussion about what we'll call the upsell. The upsell would be Senator Lindsey Graham and other crazed neocons just constantly pushing America to get in there and really clean out Iran. No, not our problem. We decided to help out the Israelis, and the nuclear threat was big enough to do it, but otherwise, not our problem, okay? Well, now if the ceasefire sticks, well, there is no upsell to be had. Sorry, Lindsey, you can go back to bed now, boy. So there's that. Let's see if there was another thing. Yes, and then is our mission finished? I would say for the most part, I really believe that we're now looking at the next phase, as I said, which is to move into honest, methodical regime change, which again, Israel has planned for years, and now the moment is upon them. So all of this said, though, I do want to float one other suggestion about Iran. Does the Ayatollah have his own dead man's switch? Okay? If they reach a certain point of desperation, even though they have this ceasefire, will the Ayatollah pull his dead man's switch? And what would that look like? What would they do? I have no idea. But, you know, anybody who's in a position of power knows that they have to have their ultimate fallback plan, better known as a dead man's switch. So it's called Let's Stay Tuned. It's going to stay fast changing as far as I can tell. All right, so I'll just leave it at that. And also the Iranian Revolutionary Guard headquarters are now dust, right? There was that attack. They showed the huge explosion of the place. So it just, you know, bit by bit, their ability to fight back is gone. Gone. All right. Now, all right, I'll just mention it. I put up this link to, what was it? Victor Davis Hanson's 10 questions, okay? So what do we make of the destruction? What happens now? Will Iran release its terrorist cells? What will be the reaction on the Iranian street or by the military? And by the way, if you haven't heard already, you heard. A number of the members of the Iranian military are already defecting, right? Oh, okay. Yes. So it's stuff like that. We're releasing the political prisoners. More of the military is defecting. Reza Pahlavi is showing up, all right? And we can expect some other developments. And they're all going to push in the same direction, which I want to believe will be a civil form, a peaceful form of regime change. Okay, after the attack or the mega base, don't worry about that. Yeah, so if anything else, we would say this is a bad day for, quote, Shiaism. So anyway, so let me move on to the other news items here. I care about public education. I care about education in general a lot. There are these two articles, both striking at the same problem. Our legacy systems for academic excellence are failing us, okay? The SAT test and the ACT, but the SAT first. anybody who's followed this, because of Common Core, they introduced a form of testing called SBAC, and there was another form of it, the name escapes me right now, PPD or something. But the concept of the SBAC test, smarter, balanced assessment, that's the word I'm looking for, consortium. So the concept is, you as a student sit down, you're answering some questions. You answer a question and the system says, oh, you did okay with that question. Now we're going to give you a tougher question. So they want to see how well you can do with tougher and tougher questions. That's the idea. Well, the opposite applies. Oh, you didn't do so well with that question. All right, we're going to give you a dumber question. Unfortunately, the net impact is to cause the whole system to become dumbed down. And this is a serious problem. So, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, the very worst elements in our education system have infiltrated our most important foundational institutions of education. And I am putting out the call. They got to go. We got to push the reset button, get back to what we're doing. And if you're having problems with this issue of how different students are in their performance, we will look at it and find some other answer. All right, meantime, let me move on to the next thing. Steve Bannon has called for the investigation of Fox News as working for some unnamed foreign agent. Let me think. Got any ideas, Eric, as to who that foreign agent might be? Yes, China, that's right. Yes, okay. Now there's some controversy here because there's a suggestion that Rupert Murdoch and George Soros might actually be good buddies.
I understand that the FBI has also discovered or has now alleged that the 2020 election was in fact stolen.
Good. That's a good start.
And that China was involved. Consequently, do you know who the first news network to call the race for Joe Biden was?
Oh, ABC? No. NBC? No. Oh, okay, who? Fox? Oh my goodness. Wow. All right, well that, all the more reason, this is partly part of the reason why Steve is a little upset. So we have a thing on that. Will they be investigated? They should be. You know, this issue with what are called captured elites in our country remains an unexamined problem, and I mean unexamined, all right? We got to get to work on this, and hopefully this will be the start. And now, we'll move on to some other things a little bit different, but boy, they interesting. Okay, China has reported that they have discovered the largest deposit of gold in the world. They estimate that it's worth $80 billion in gold and other minerals. So the interesting part of the story is they claim that they used AI to find these deposits. All right, well, we'll see if others find equally interesting deposits, but that was pretty cool. But another thing that's cool, for all you paleontology fans out there, you know, the research goes on in terms of discovering dinosaur fossils. And one of the things that we've managed to do in the last couple of decades is discover fossils that actually have soft tissues. Well, that's incredible. In other words, this that could survive for 100 million years encased in rock. Now you peel back the rock and there are the cells. There's the tissue. That's incredible. So they had reported on having found 183 million year old soft tissue in this case. And in the meantime, I want to mention Tina Peters. I call it cleanup in the Colorado aisle. We are learning more and more, and Mike Lindell can report on this. The Colorado judiciary is a standout when it comes to corruption. And you have the federal government sort of creeping up on the issue. Over the last couple of months, there have been repeated news stories about how the federal government is going to start examining the state judiciary in Colorado more closely. See, if I had, because it is kind of important, the allegations are noteworthy, all right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'll make a count. Let's see here. Where is it? It's somewhere around here. Basically, it's a lack of integrity, abuse of power, and just plain old ordinary ineptitude. It's such a bad, toxic brew that it demands federal intervention. Just saying. Let's see now, just one or two other quick things, and then we are out of here. Let's see, what was the other thing? All right. I just want to mention, especially after this meeting I was at yesterday, in the case of Connecticut, there is a simmering pot of scandal involving election integrity in Connecticut. Now, those who follow this are aware of a few things. And I want to add, going back to Ben Proto and the election tomorrow, he claims that there is no election fraud in Connecticut. Wow. Wow. Now, who do you work for again, Ben? Wow. Okay. Yeah. So there's that. See, so there's that. Yes, and more Biden secrets uncovered. And oh, by the way, yes, last thing, food additive of the week, azocarbonamide. Okay, that is one nasty chemical, let me tell you. And this nasty chemical is banned in Europe. It's banned in Australia. Okay, but we use it here in all our doughs and flours because it helps to improve the kneading quality of the dough. Yet, evidence. So here's the molecule. A little bit messier than the other molecules that I've shown. There it is. And yeah, there are respiratory issues if you're working in a plant and you're exposed to this stuff. And so flour bleaching agent, dough conditioner. But yeah, no, the EU said, no, this is unhealthy stuff. And there are questions about whether the byproducts are carcinogenic. Okay, so they're all, yeah. So I just had to share that with you. And on that happy note, I will see you next week.